Anyone that's taken a cruise knows the story in cruising is more, more, more. More people, bigger ships, more to eat, see, and do. But cruising is constantly evolving, and part of that evolution is something, both good and bad, disappearing. From small things to major changes, here's what you might say goodbye to in the near future. This is one that's quickly on the way out. There's a lot of evidence for it. It used to be that room service was always free. You want a midnight turkey sandwich? Just pick up the phone and place an order. That is definitely not the case anymore. First, there were charges for ordering room service at certain times. So if you ordered before, say, 9 p.m., then you could have room service for free. Order the same thing at 3 a.m. and there would be a cost. Then there were charges for certain items. Maybe simple things like a piece of cake or a sandwich were offered for free, but if you were getting a full meal, then there would be a charge. Now, most lines seem to have fees for room service, either charging you by the item for your order or having a flat fee no matter what you get. Often, continental breakfast is still free, but outside of that, you have to pay. Given the trend, however, it seems obvious that a fee for even that could be on tap. Now, we all know that the pandemic had changed so much in our lives, and yes, that includes in cruising. Anyone who sailed before the shutdown knows that each evening you had the room steward drop off a paper daily planner for the next day. Inside, it listed everything going on around the ship the next day, helpful information, and things to know. Anyone that sailed since the pandemic, however, knows that these are way harder to come by now. Some lines still drop them off at the room each evening, but many have moved to just having the daily planner on the cruise line's app. So anytime that you want to see what's going on, you have to pull out your phone. If you still want a paper copy to see things at a glance like I personally like to do, they are available at a central spot like guest services. But how much longer will that be the case? Does it make sense to continue to design and print daily schedules when the vast majority of people are no longer using them? This is one that is definitely creeping in, and I worry that it's just going to get worse. Food is a big part of any cruise. You will always have two places that are included with your fare to eat, the buffet and the main dining room. Outside of that, however, it varies widely. First, every line outside of Virgin Voyages offers specialty restaurants where you have to pay extra if you want to eat there. So, if you want to go to the steakhouse or the fancy Italian spot, it's usually an extra charge, and it's not always cheap. But lines have very different philosophies when it comes to free versus paid restaurants. Some cruise lines, such as Carnival, are fairly generous with what they offer in addition to the buffet and dining room included in your fare. The overall trend, however, seems to be toward adding in more and more paid options. And included food seems to be more like snacks instead of places where you can get an actual meal. Now, I don't think the buffet and the dining room are going anywhere. Outside of that, don't be surprised to see included options actually dwindle as time goes on. For you lovers of the older days of cruising when ships were much smaller with far fewer passengers, sorry, but that is disappearing in most cases. To be sure, if you want to pay luxury prices, then there are plenty of smaller ship options for you. But if sailing on a mass market line, then smaller vessels are surely disappearing. In the early 1990s, the average size of a new ship was somewhere around 70,000 gross tons. Now ships being built push the envelope at 150,000 gross tons or more, and the largest hitting 250,000 gross tons. It's just a fact that new ships are being built for major lines that are bigger than they used to be. And as those older and smaller ships age out, it reduces your options for passengers who prefer to sail small. One thing that could disappear, or more accurately be reduced, is something that cruise lines have slowly been working toward with long-term plans, and that is reducing the environmental impact of cruising. All the major lines have long-term plans to reduce their environmental impact. In fact, in their most recent annual report, Carnival has an entire section on climate risk, including risks that, quote, cruising no longer aligns to consumers' climate values. If you've been on the back of a cruise ship, it's likely that you've seen soot on the deck and the railings, or you've for sure seen the exhaust billowing out of the towers. Thankfully, newer ships are burning cleaner fuel like LNG, albeit not a perfect solution. Ports are also working on offering up shore power that ships can plug into when docked so that they don't have to burn that fuel when they are docked in a port of call. Carnival Corporation, for instance, says that they peaked their emissions in 2011 despite adding considerably to capacity since then. So hopefully, emissions and the carbon impact across the industry will continue to get smaller. What else might disappear from your next cruise? What about some ports of call? This is for two reasons. First, while many ports welcome the cruise tourist and the dollars that they bring, others aren't exactly excited. Key West, in particular, voted to limit the visits from cruise ships on both the number of ships in port and the size. That was overruled by the state, but further action closed 2 public docks, limiting the island to just 1 cruise ship per day. Other ports around the world have also fought against big cruise ships docking due to issues from over-tourism and environmental factors. Beyond that, cruise lines are increasingly turning the ship into a destination, offering so many things to do and see that passengers actually want to spend more time aboard. Then there are private destinations that have grown increasingly popular, talking about spots like Royal Caribbean's Coco Cay, MSC's Ocean Key, and Carnival's upcoming Celebration Key. These spots become ports of call on practically any cruise in the area. Between the ships offering so much and destinations being close by, don't be surprised if outside ports of call, though never going away, do get overshadowed somewhat. Now I've talked about a number of free things disappearing, like room service and the included restaurants, but I actually think some of those extra charges will also disappear. Now, this isn't talking out of both sides of my mouth, but I actually see cruising taking 2 different routes. Some will continue with the path of selling cheap fares and then charging for anything extra on board. But other lines, they are jumping at offering bundles that make the cruise more all-inclusive. Instead of buying the cruise and then paying more for things like Wi-Fi, and then more for a drink package, and then more for a specialty restaurant, these sorts of things are all included in the cruise fare on some lines. Celebrity, Princess, and Norwegian Cruise Line, they all have this sort of offer, and it seems to be only getting more popular as they add more features to booking this way. When Virgin Voyages introduced adults-only cruising, it was a major shakeup to the industry. Now, adults have an entire cruise line that's focused solely on them instead of having to account for families with children when it comes to things like entertainment, food, and more. Even before, however, the kids everywhere idea on cruise ships, it had been disappearing. That looks to continue. Already, major lines like Carnival and Royal Caribbean, they carve out adults-only spaces like the Serenity Deck on Carnival ships, giving adults their own spots free from younger passengers. Now, we're seeing Royal Caribbean open up a new spot on Coco Cay called Hideaway Beach. It's a brand new carve out of the island that charges admission, but it is also only for adults. Don't be surprised if over time, cruise lines continue to offer more and more spots where kids aren't allowed, although families will always be welcomed. It used to be simple to pick a cruise cabin. Select your cruise, and then you go inside, ocean view, balcony, or suite. Those same options are still available, but with tons more for you to choose from, having a simple room choice is something that is definitely disappearing. Today, cruise lines continue to carve out unique spaces on their ships. Some of these are essentially resorts within a resort where you can get a balcony room, but in a more exclusive part of the ship with more perks and different design. Others are unique suites and rooms that go from just a little bit nicer to places that simply look like a New York penthouse. Think of it like automobiles. Anyone who wants to buy just a simple car knows that's a lot harder today, as you have all sorts of brands and packages to choose from. Buying a cruise cabin isn't that complex, but the simplicity of your choices is disappearing. Now, I've talked about the rise of megaships that are so much bigger today. One reason for that larger size is not just more passengers that the ship can carry, but also more things to do on the ship. New ships are loaded with things to do literally everywhere that you turn. Anyone that sailed older ships, however, knows that they were just built differently. Frankly, many of them just had large open spaces, especially on the pool decks. No pools or restaurants or water slides, just frankly open deck. For those that like having a little bit of breathing room, that sort of blank space is actually pretty nice, but let's be honest, space is at a premium on a cruise ship, and having wide open areas just doesn't make a ton of sense. That's why the newest ships and those that get refurbished have seemingly every inch dedicated to something. If you want to disconnect from everything back home, for decades there was arguably no better vacation to take than a cruise. In the middle of the ocean, hundreds of miles from land, of course you aren't going to see that text or check that email or see that call that you missed. I think it's unfortunate in a lot of ways that being able to disconnect is quickly disappearing in cruising. First, there's been a major push by the cruise lines to push people to their phones. This is largely with the cruise line app that has the ship map, the schedule of activities, reservations, your onboard account, and more. Then there are moves like having QR codes to pull up menus in restaurants. The bottom line is that you can cruise without your phone, but it's not nearly as convenient. Then online access is also being offered wider than ever. The packages offered by cruise lines typically include Wi-Fi. And even if you don't have it included in your cruise fare, given how Wi-Fi access enables everything from checking email to streaming a movie, many people do opt for the service, me included. The result is that yes, you can cruise and fully disconnect, but those days seem to be disappearing fast. Thank you so much for watching. I want to know what you think about this video. What do you think might disappear in the future? Or what are your thoughts and opinions on some of the things that I mentioned? Be sure to put them in the comments below. Remember, you can always find more on Cruzely.com about everything cruising, and I hope that you'll like and subscribe. Until next time, happy sailing.